Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Against the Ropes. I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, RichQ on Q, Tumblr.com, on Q Sports, and certainly check out the YouTube page for some great boxing clips and MMA in-depth features as well. All right, Friday, August 15th, 2014 at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Quebec, Canada. It's going to be, I believe, the first all-female pro card in North American history. On the line, we have one of the young boxers making their pro debut. That is Lita Mae Button. She'll take on Maureen Riordon. That's slated for 4 rounds. I believe that's going to be one of the early bouts on this wonderful card that's provided to us by promoter David Danfus, Nordic Coliseum Boxing. And with that, we welcome in Lita. And Lita, first and foremost, I appreciate a couple moments. Give us your mindset going in. How's training? How do you feel mentally for this one?
Very focused and excited and just plugging away at the last little preparations here.
And it's tough to say if you have a scouting report, so to speak, on your opponent, but do you know anything about your opponent? Have you trained a certain way, or have you just kind of go about your business where you got your sparring in, you got your cardio up where it needs to be, you got some bag work in? How are you going to approach this fight?
With focus and listening to my coach and a lot of pressure and technical ability, because I know that she's not as experienced as I am in the boxing field. I know that she has a background in MMA and jiu-jitsu, and which is quite different from just focusing on boxing for the majority that I have been for the last 9 years. So definitely I know I'm one of the strongest females out there, so I'm working on that capability as well as my speed and technical abilities.
Lita Mae Button joining us for a couple moments on this edition of Against the Ropes. I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Lita, you mentioned that you have that experience, that background. Talk a little bit about that, because I know you had a pretty distinguished amateur background as well and really fought on some big-time stages. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, like I said, I have 45 amateur fights, 30 wins, 15 losses. Last year I took the Canadian Golden Glove title home, as well as placed split decision, with Kansas City International ringside tournament. So, I mean, boxing is my absolute love and passion, and I've done a bit of rolling in judo and that, but because I'm a full support mother as well and doing business and that on the side, you can only focus on one thing at a time right now. So my focus is very much being a mom and a competitive boxer, as well as a business personal trainer, and branching into coaching.
Let me ask you 2 more, and again, I appreciate a couple moments. What about the underfunding in female boxing? Where do you see the state of female boxing, and what are your long-term goals?
Long-term goals is essentially to be in and get out of, because I'm going to be 35 here come this fall, and I believe I'll be 25 in my heart for the rest of my life, but to have a title shot in less than a year and just build myself up here, so I'll be out of the pro in the next 2 years. That's my ultimate long-term goal, fighting professionally wise. But in funding, yes, very much underfunded. I mean, boxing itself is one of the oldest Olympic sports, and to just have 3 weight categories for women's Olympics in 2012, and then they were told that if there was a good turnout in the Olympics, there would be more divisions that would open up, but that didn't occur. And then going for funding in that and applying for funding for women's, it's almost next to nil, unless you're like right in the top 0.5% of women in the world to get, especially in Canada, which in other sports like hockey and that, there's more funding and that's put towards it, but for sports that aren't really followed like women's boxing so much, it's very, very difficult.
Well, it seems to be that even in the States and overseas, there has been an influx, which is a positive. I certainly think the opportunity to be on TV, the networks, solid promotions, I think that's going to be the key as well. And, everyone always believes the female boxers have to promote themselves. They certainly do. But you know what? You absolutely need a lot of help, marketing, networking, promotions on the side. Before I let you get out of here, we live in this world of social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything you like to plug before we get out of here today?
Yes. I'm at Badass Button under Twitter, and then as well as my website is badassbuttonboxing.com, and you can find all my business endeavors in that because I do fitness in that, boot camp, especially boot camps. But just to say a big thank you to Nordic Coliseum Boxing for promoting and putting on the first all-time female professional card here in North America. We really appreciate that, and the amount of support and eyes and social media that's going towards that is definitely a step forward in the right direction. And being a part of that, I totally appreciate. Take it all in.
So there you have it, a couple minutes with Lita Mae Button joining us on this edition of Against the Ropes as she's prepping to make her pro debut. We talked about it all week long. It's going to be a wonderful card. Nordic Coliseum Boxing presents NCWB1 Women's Boxing card, the first all-female pro card in North American history. You're going to see some great boxers on the card. We'll talk a little bit about that as the week progresses, and you're going to see some young boxers making their pro debut. Don't forget to follow them on Twitter, NCWB at Coliseum Boxing. That's NCWB at Coliseum Boxing. And, of course, follow me, Rich Q, on Q. Also, check out my podcast on the YouTube page. You can just Google Rich Quinones. And, as always, Tumblr.com on Q Sports. All right, we'll step aside. When we come back, we'll continue with a little boxing on this edition of Against the Ropes.